What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Rock Your Brand podcast. Today, we are going to be giving you a little bit of an update, our September Etsy numbers, and we're going to talk about how our sales have been up by over 280%. I think it was 208%, Chris, 280. What was it? I forget the number now.
It depends on when you were looking at the screenshot from yesterday. It started at 209, then it dropped dramatically to like 208.8 or something like that. So, yeah,
there you go. I appreciate that. Yeah. So 208, I know at one point we were up over 300, but it's kind of, it kind of went down a little bit, which is okay. But, we'll take 200% increase. So what we're going to be doing, though, is going through what happened. Like, why did this happen? And then also we're going to talk about what we're going to be doing moving forward and why I really feel like this is ramping things up for Q4, which, by the way, we are kind of in Q4, but not really. Q4 to me really kicks off about November 1st because that is like the buying season, right? But right now we have seen a steady increase, and believe it or not, it's not just for Halloween stuff, it's for Christmas stuff, which is pretty awesome. So, Chris, that's what we're going to be doing here today, breaking this down and talking about everything as far as what we believe is those growth, things that we did that is actually making this happen. And I do have some things that I want to share. So, Chris, with that all being said, I know that I shot you over the numbers. What did you like the best about those numbers? And there's something in, I think that I know what you're going to say, but what is the thing that you liked the most about that screenshot that I shared with you?
So I'm actually going to pull it up on my side, but the two things that really stood out to me, Scott, were one, just the overall revenue number, right? I always like seeing that. But the biggest thing that really stood out to me is that 208% number. And the reason for that is we're not in Q4 yet. So yes, we had talked, I guess, at the end of last month, not the end of last month being September, but the end of last month being August. I know we're on October now, but bear with me, guys. We're like 4 days into October, and I still haven't realized that it's 2023. So bear with me on that. But seeing that percentage increase is the biggest thing that stood out to me. And then the second biggest thing there, Scott, is the conversion rate difference between September and August. And I can't sit here and claim credit for that. Like, yes, we did tweak some things and we played around with some things that had lower conversion rates and we tried to get some higher conversion rates. But the biggest thing that we noticed that was really holding us back in August was having lower conversion rates. And we knew the further we got into the end of the year, the more we got into Q4, the higher that those were going to start to go. And we basically doubled that as well. Part of that is because people are out of like the summer season and into the fall Q4 type behavior. And we're going to continue to see that increase. And part of that is we really did start to optimize a lot of the stuff that we were doing in August. And so those were the two numbers, that overall percentage increase year over year and the conversion rate increase, which to me makes a huge difference between August and September. That's something everybody's going to want to keep in mind. Even if you're converting on the lower end in August, you may start to see that spike in September. So I was curious. I didn't know, Scott, if you had the difference, but if I remember correctly, it's like almost double what we were seeing back in August.
Yeah, no, it is. Here's the deal. Here's what I'm really, really liking about this is that, again, we're going to get into the reasons why here in a second, but the big thing that I'm loving is I'm hearing that some people are saying like Etsy sales haven't really started to ramp up yet for them. So for us, I'm like, wow, this is really good. What's the difference? Why do I feel like our sales haven't been increasing? And really, I would like to say that I want to give a lot of credit to my wife because she's the one that is, creating some really amazing products and designs. So I think it does come down to you have to have good products, right? And the other thing that I think is worth highlighting, and this is something that I've been preaching for a very long time, is we are focusing on one type of customer, right? So we just had an email come in, and Chris, you sent that over to me yesterday. And it really did solidify what we have been preaching. And that is when you're creating great products for a specific type of customer, they will come back and buy from you over and over and over again. So there's people that purchased last year that are buying for this year. There's people that purchased last year that have bought throughout the year. The thing is that I feel like that has increased our sales is we've built momentum from last year to this year. And now that my wife is creating new products and putting them up there, these people are seeing them. Okay. And so when people are seeing these new products and they've already purchased in the past, we already know that they are interested in this niche. There's a good chance they might buy it. So that's one thing, right? And the other thing is, and this is where I see a lot of people making this mistake, and that is we are also going after products for the most part that are in demand. Okay. And a lot of people just they see a product they like and they want to just sell it, right? They're like, this is a really cool product, I want to sell it, right? Or people are buying this, I think. We don't really guess. What we do is we find products that we know have demand. So before we do any type of marketing, before we do any type of running Etsy ads, which we'll talk about that here in a minute, because that was a huge driver as well. And you probably want to know how much we spent and were they profitable and all of those things. And we're going to talk about that. But we have always thought of what are the products that get the attention. And I think anyone right now that is fairly new, that is something that you need to think about. If you're putting up products and you're not getting views, you're not getting sales, you have to ask yourself, am I supposed to be? Because if you're just putting up products and hoping that people are searching for this, we got to change that. So what we've always done is really validated those products, those front end products. And the reason why I say front end products is because there's going to be products that you're going to put up that aren't getting a lot of demand necessarily. And they're not your, let's call them your lead magnets in a sense, or your customer magnets. Let's call it that. That sounds better, because we want to get a lot of attention, and using a product that's in demand will allow us to do that. Once they're in our shop, now we can have products that don't have demand as far as people searching for them, but people would maybe add them in their cart. We see this all the time. You go into the supermarket because they have a great deal on Pepsi, buy one, get one free, or buy one, get two free. You go in there and you walk out with a whole bunch of other things. It's the same idea. But if you're selling random stuff, it's a lot harder to make that happen. Because if someone came in looking for, you got them on a bass fishing shirt, but then they go to your shop and that's the only thing you have on bass fishing, they're probably not going to buy anything else. Maybe if something else kind of caught their eye or their interest, but for the most part, it's not going to be as easy. So the biggest thing here, and one of the mistakes I see a lot of people making, is not really having products that have good demand and focusing on those products that are going to drive traffic, that are going to get sales velocity, and they're going to get sales. So this way here, we build a customer base and all of those things that go with it. And I really feel like we've built momentum from last year to this year by focusing on just that. So that's the very first thing that I would say that I believe is the cause of the increase in sales in this early in Q4, or not even in Q4, before Q4 officially. Chris, anything you want to say on that?
Yeah. So in terms of things for a specific customer, right? The email that you were talking about, one, they also play into the second thing that I know that we were going to talk about today, but it really is about creating multiple products for a specific type of a customer. And that will lead to some of the other things that we think are the root causes of what really caused this year-over-year growth for us. But if you think about it this way, Scott, it's not just creating that top level thing, right? So if we have a bass fishing store, yes, we could create one bass fishing t-shirt that just has a generic largemouth bass on it. And if that's selling well, we could just stop there. But there's also a lot of sub niches within that bass fishing niche. And if we're not also thinking about those people and creating particular products for those people, we can be leaving a lot on the table. So Scott, have you ever heard of a peacock bass?
A what now?
A peacock bass.
I have not.
So it's not actually a bass, right? It's more like a tilapia, but a lot of people confuse it with a bass. And so it actually has a name of peacock bass. So if we're in the bass fishing niche and we have something that appeals to people that is a largemouth bass on the t-shirt, we could potentially take that same design, swap out the largemouth bass for a peacock bass. And yes, we don't necessarily have the same level of sales data to back up that decision, but we've already created the design. We're only really swapping out one element. The only real risk we have at that point is the 20 cents of the listing fee. And then if there's no real search volume for it or anything like that, then we don't even have to worry about spending ad money on it because it's not a thing. But there is potentially a big subsection of our audience who's like, I love bass fishing, not a huge fan of largemouth bass. I'd buy that if it didn't have a largemouth bass on it. When we put up the peacock bass version of that, they're then going to buy that. And that's one of the things that really stuck out to me from that email from one of our customers yesterday, was they were saying, not only do you have great designs, but you have designs that speak specifically to me and my niche. And you're not always going to start out with all of those sub niches in there. You do have to start out with the ones that have demand. But once you've seen that this particular design sells, then we can apply it to different products, or we can swap it out for another thing. Just swap out that one element, which bass fish is on the t-shirt, for something else that would appeal to the niche. The people who have already bought it then have a chance to buy it again. And the people who are really into that specific version of the thing can then raise their hand and buy that from you as being part of your niche and that really specific sub niche. Does that make sense?
Yep, absolutely. And I don't see a lot of people really focusing on that. I just see a lot of people that are just creating a shop full of products that are either trending or they heard someone else say that they sell very well. And to me, it's just so much easier when you are focusing on like one niche, or even niches that are related to each other that could have some cross, selling and potentially other products that they'd be interested in. So that's the very first thing that I would say. Like, we have not veered off of that path. All right. So that's number one. And the second thing that I do believe is the reason for this spike in sales for September of 208, I think it was 208.5%, Chris, I think is what it went to. So here is the second thing. Really, really, really focusing on traffic. And the way that we are doing that is, the number one way right this second is using Etsy ads. Like, we dialed up our Etsy ads way, way more than we did last year. Last year, I was pretty much like, you know what? I'll turn on the ads. We'll see what happens. And, we'll just come back and look at it in 30 days, right? And we'll spend $2 a day, $5 a day. Like, that's it. Well, this year, what I wanted to do, and this is something that I call priming the Etsy pump, is where the mindset is changed for me in the regards of, I'm looking at how can I drive as much traffic, targeted traffic, to products that are in demand, and how can I do that the quickest? And there's a lot of benefits that come with this, not just the sale, but the sales are nice, right? So the very first thing that I'll say, because I know that a lot of people are going to want to know, is like, how much did you guys spend last month, in that September month, where you were able to do 11,500? I think it was $11,500. I don't have the screenshot in front of me, but how were we able to do that, and how much did we spend? It was around $1,500, a little bit more. I think it was 1,500 and some change, right? So $1,500. Now, from that $1,500, actually, I did post about it here. So I'm going to pull up that post. So I have my notes in front of me. So it was 1,500, and where is it now, Scott? It is $1,576.47. And that brought in 119 orders. Okay. And the revenue that came from those orders was $4,324.62. Okay. But overall, we did over $11,000, and we did over, what was it, 300 and some change there, 332 orders. So the way that I look at this is, yes, we spent $1,500. We directly from ads brought in over $4,000, but overall it did $11,500. So there's over 200 sales that came organically. And no, not all of them, I would say, are attributed to the ads, but what the ads did was, and this we've been playing around with as far as launching products, is really getting aggressive with ads when you're launching a product, but the product is in demand. Remember that. Okay. And so what we did was we ran a promo for the launched product and we dialed up the Etsy ads. The other thing that I did with the Etsy ads is I said, you know what, let's experiment with the budget, because we were always like $5 a day, $10 a day. If we want to get crazy, we'll go $20 a day and we'll see what happens. Well, I said, you know what, they're willing to let us spend $500 per day. Let's see if they'll even spend that. So I turned it on for one day. I was going to see, because if they spent 500, I was going to be like, holy crap, they're spending $500. But I didn't think they would. So I went ahead and turned up that ad budget to 500, and we ended up spending that day like maybe $40. So I was like, okay, it didn't spend that. Let's do it for another day, see what happens. Did it for another day, about the same, right? And so then after I did that for a few days, I noticed that we were also now approved, because you kind of, after you spend a certain amount of money, Etsy will then increase your budget amount that they'll let you max spend. And it went up to $1,000, which is their max. So I said, let me try that. See what happens. Be a great experiment. Put it up to $1,000 per day. And the most that we've ever spent since doing that, which I think it's been over 2 or 3 weeks since I brought it up to $1,000, the most we've ever spent is $80 a day. And I think on average, we're right around $45 a day. Okay. And that is giving us a lot of potential, the max amount of potential, because we're saying to Etsy, hey, run with it. Let's see what you got. And the other thing is it's giving us a lot of data behind the scenes. And then we're able to kind of look at that and go, okay, what kind of keywords are they targeting? Are these good? Are they bad? We can trim these, we can tweak, and we can get a lot of intelligence from just running those ads. That's been a big one for us. And I'm not letting off the gas on that. And the reason why I'm saying priming the Etsy pump, and the reason why I don't care that I spent $1,500 and directly I only made $4,500. So after you take out your cost of goods and the ad cost, you might have made, I don't know, $500, let's say, on that. But I acquired over 100 customers, by the way, and people that are running ads that don't understand that you're acquiring a customer, you really need to understand that, because if you're doing it properly and you acquire a customer, that customer can pay you for years to come if you have products that they're interested in. So that's one thing. But the other thing is I'm also getting those sales from those ads that are also now going to help me organically get ranked. All right. Because there's one thing that one of the main thing that Etsy looks at when ranking is, and SEO can be great. It doesn't have to even be that great. They're going to look at sales. Okay. Now, I'm not saying don't have a good optimized listing. I am saying you should do all of those things, but they're really looking at sales. So what we did was we actually did I think we ran about 5 products, and we just said, you know what, let's just go ahead and let's price these to sell and let's get that momentum. And that, to me, has really, really worked. So Chris, I know we talked a little bit on this about as far as like what we wanted to share as far as like with the Etsy ads, with the traffic and all that stuff. Is there anything else that you want to add there with the Etsy ad side of things?
A few questions that I know I would have looking at this, and we actually just got a good one that I want to address while we're talking about this, Scott. So you said you set the maximum budget to $1,000 per day, but you're only really spending 50, like I think you said 45 on average, but the most you spent was $80. So why would it be the case that you're telling Etsy that they can spend $1,000, but they're only spending $80 of that? And this comes back to something you and I talk about, which is understanding the total amount of demand for your product. Now, as we get further into Q4, if we leave that budget at $1,000, are they going to spend more than 80? Yes. And it's for the same reason. It's the total amount of traffic. So if we're giving Etsy more money to spend and they aren't spending that entire budget, that tells us that we've basically maxed out the amount of things that Etsy thinks that the products we're currently advertising are relevant for. And it's important for 2 reasons. One, if we do want to continue to grow that ad spend and grow the return on investment that we get from that ad spend, we can add more products in to start to raise that budget. But also, it means we're getting the maximum amount of data back from Etsy. And Scott, this is something you and I have talked about a bunch when it comes to Etsy ads. The key to having a search optimized listing is to know not just the keywords that have volume, but much more specifically, the keywords that will lead your ideal customer to find and then purchase your product. That's the ultimate sign to Etsy that your listing is search engine optimized, which is the whole point of SEO. Remember, the goal of the Etsy SEO algorithm is not just to put up random products. It's not to put up the products of the people who pay the most. It is to put up the product that most closely matches both the search term that somebody is typing in and what they believe the intent of that term to mean in the eyes of the buyer. So their goal is to always, no matter what anybody types into Etsy's search engine, to surface the product that is most likely to result in that person who is searching purchasing that product. So if they show your product, someone buys it. How do we find that out? Well, we can go into the long-term game of let me write a title, let me write a description, let me do all of those kinds of things, and then wait 3 to 6 months. Or we can go down the route of maximizing our data and saying, because with Etsy ads, Etsy is much more open with what they consider us to be relevant for. They'll say, hey, bottle, what are all of the adjectives that we could use that are synonyms to the word bottle? Jug, jar, bowl, right? They get a lot more broad with it than they would just on the organic side because they figure, hey, if you're willing to pay for it, we'll put you up. And if you're not relevant, then you'll stop paying for it. Right? If you're not getting sales, you're not getting the return on investment, that's on you. On the organic side, they kind of play the other way. So it gets us maximum keyword data back for us then to be able to quickly turn around and optimize those listings for the organic side of things, which is really what we're after all, from a technical perspective. But the other side that gives us, not just the data to go in and tweak our title, tweak our description, all of those kinds of things, but it also gives us the initial data of traffic and sales into Etsy, which means if we're even closely relevant for those things on the organic side of things, then they're going to surface us at the top of the listing as well. And so that's really the thing I wanted people to take away. It's not about how much you spend. It's about getting as much data back as you possibly can. And in our case, yes, we had $1,000 budget. We only spent 80 on average. That just means for those listings, we were kind of maxed out, or sorry, 80 at the top and like 45 on average. That means we were kind of maxed out in terms of what Etsy shows us impressions for, which means we're getting our maximum data back. So if your goal is to optimize as fast as possible, you should be looking for when you're out budgeting your spend. So if you have a budget of $50, you're only spending 45, that's not a bad thing. That tells you one very specific thing. You've hit the maximum number of impressions that Etsy thinks you are relevant for, which is good because it means you're getting as much data for those listings as possible in as short amount of time as possible. The other thing, somebody had asked, what if you don't have the money to do that, Scott? Are you wasting money with a lower budget? My quick take on that is no. Obviously, you're not wasting money if you have a lower budget. You're just not getting that data back as quickly. And we, for the last year and a half, we're averaging about $5 a day in spend, even during Q4 last year. And we got a huge return on investment for that last year. But we're looking at this a little bit differently now. We're not looking just at the direct return on investment, which is obviously something we're still tracking because we'd like to make money upfront with these sales. But we're looking at the long-term customer value of these things. And we're looking at the value of the data and shortcutting that process so that if we launch a new product listing that should be optimized for Q4 this year, can we get as much data as possible back over the next 2 weeks by spending more than $5 a day on ads, hitting that impression cap, right? Getting Etsy to show our ad to as many people as possible on the platform over the next 2 weeks to say, did we write our title or description correctly? Are we targeting the right keywords, the best keywords for this specific product or not? And so you just don't get that data back as fast if you're not spending as much. It doesn't mean that you have to spend 20, 40, 50, 80, $1,000 a day. It just means you're not going to get that data back quite as quickly. Now, Scott, what are your thoughts on if you had to spend less, so you were limited to that $5 a day budget? Would you simply include fewer listings? Would that change your strategy at all if you didn't have that extra capital to spend?
Yeah. Well, again, in the very, very beginning, that's what we did. We only spent like $2 a day, and then we bumped it up to $5 a day, got real crazy. So I say start with even $2 a day and just get the data coming in, because you are going to get data. Now, to your point, are you going to spend $2 on 100 listings? No, I probably wouldn't do that. What I would do, and this way here, you can really micromanage it in a sense, is I would get 3 to 5 products that you feel like are your customer attraction piece, right? Like those are the products that are getting good demand, that are, in your market. They're buying, you have proof of it, you validated it, all of that stuff. I would go ahead and pick 3 to 5 of those and then turn on your Etsy ads. And I would start at, if you can, $5 a day. I just think it makes it simpler. It gives it a little bit of room there to spend. But if you only want to spend $2 a day, even $1 a day, they let you do a minimum of $1 per day. Like something is better than nothing is the way I look at it. And you are going to start seeing views, you're going to see clicks, and you're going to see sales. All right. So that's what I would suggest there. And the question that we got the other day, Chris, because I probably should mention this. We are running a workshop, and this will be a little shameless plug here, but just to kind of let you guys know, we are running a workshop. It's an Etsy Ads Accelerator workshop. It is going to be October 5th, which, if you're watching this live, is going to be tomorrow. And we're going to be sharing everything that we've learned. We're also going to be going over like high level view, and then we're going to dig in and we're going to actually get the ball rolling for people that have been on the fence of running Etsy ads, or people that just want to understand it better and also learn how to make them work for them. We're also going to do a 5-day Etsy ads challenge as part of this workshop. So if you're interested in joining us, the doors are closing for enrollment here tonight at midnight Eastern. Go over to brandcreators.com/ads, and you can be part of this live group coaching that we're doing. It's going to be 2 different sessions. One is going to be tomorrow, and then we're going to follow it up next week. And we're going to have our students coming back so we can review, and we can also pull up a few of our students that are willing to let us share. And we're going to go ahead and dig into their numbers and kind of show how to tweak and how to understand the data, and also how to tweak the data. So if you're interested in that, go to brandcreators.com/ads. All right. But what I was saying is, you want to be able to get that data, right? And the way to get it, the quickest way to get it, is to start running Etsy ads. And a lot of people are like, well, I don't want to start running them until I start making money. Here's the deal. You need to get momentum. And the way to get momentum is to understand who you are targeting and getting in front of those people. So this way here, you have a possibility of getting a sale. I saw someone on social media the other day that was struggling, and they're like, what's the best way to get your first sale? And someone said, just do good SEO. It takes time. It might take 2 or 3 months. I don't know about you, but I don't want to wait 2 or 3 months, right? Here's my answer. You only want to get one sale right now. Turn on Etsy ads. Well, first off, timeout. Make sure that your listing is all optimized, good title, good images, good tags, all of that stuff, right? Make sure that's good. Make sure it's in demand, and then run Etsy ads. Start getting sales, and that's going to then rank you, okay? Because if you get sales and your listing is optimized, you will rank, right? So I want to speed up that process. So that's my answer. That was my response, all right? So the bottom line is this, all right? And it sounds like we're really, pushing hard on the Etsy ads. The reason why we are is because we're priming the pump right now, right? I guarantee that when we look at our numbers in November, we spent $1,500 right now, last September, or this past month, right, in September. If we spend that same $1,500, we're probably going to get a lot more bang for our buck, okay? Because we've primed the pump, all right? So that's the big thing. We need to also understand that right now, this second, we are heading into Q4. We aren't there yet. We're like pre-Q4, even though our last month was like a Q4 month, right? I think in August of last year, no, September of last year, I think it was. I think September or August, September. I think we did like 6,500 or $7,000 total. And this past September, we did over 11.5. So numbers are ticking up, and I do believe it has to do with products, obviously, knowing your niche, and then creating good products that are in demand, and then driving traffic. And then everything else just kind of feeds off of that. And really, the Etsy ads to me is just driving that traffic and not waiting around for it. You're in control of driving it, because you're saying, hey, drive that traffic.
I think that's actually the secret, right? Like you and I are so excited about Etsy ads because it's instant traffic. And that's really what we're after. I don't care where you're getting the traffic from. That is the secret to understanding what's working and what's not on Etsy. That is what the algorithm craves. That is what you need to know what's working and what's not. It's traffic. And we can either play the game of wait and see, or we can force it, right? We can force it with things like email marketing. We can force it with things like Etsy ads. And if we have even just a couple bucks a day to start spending on something like Etsy ads on the ideal listings, the ones that we're trying to get the information on, then that's where our focus should be. Our focus should be trying to figure out how to optimize those listings so that when it is time, right? When that bell rings for Q4, and I know technically we started Q4 3 days ago, as of the time of recording this, but it really will continue to ramp up until the end of November, basically. As we start to get into the end of October, the beginning of November, all of the time and effort that we're putting into that data collection and the sales and traffic side of this that we're generating through Etsy ads right now, that's where that really starts to pay off, because we don't have to be trying to optimize our listings in the middle of that. We know based on the data that we've gotten in September and October for our new listings, right? Because that's really what we've been focused on with Etsy ads over the last few months. What are the keywords that drive traffic? What are the keywords that drive sales? How can we make sure that those listings are absolutely optimized to rank, if not first, second, or third, for those keywords when somebody types that into Etsy search, and get ourselves in that prime position for when we have the most amount of traffic coming in. So it's not about the fact that we're running ads, if that makes sense. It's really about the benefit that we get from those. And that, I think, is why you and I were so excited. Driving email traffic is great, and I'm a huge fan of email, but what that doesn't give us is it doesn't give us that missing piece of the keyword that somebody is typing in to find that. And we are very readily able to get that from the ads data to say, for this listing, if I can rank number one for this keyword, one, I have a pretty good idea of what the volume is, right? Because if I'm hitting my maximum budget in Etsy ads every day, I know how many impressions that keyword gets on a daily basis, because I can just go back and look at the ads data, which means I can then calculate a pretty good idea of how many sales I'm going to get from that and how close that gets me to my number by saying, all right, when I show up for this, I get a 10% click-through rate. And then from each of those clicks, I'm getting a 5% conversion rate. It's a little bit of basic multiplication, some basic algebra for people there, or just multiple multiplication problems, however you want to do that. And then we can start to really optimize those listings so that if we don't want to spend money, throughout Q4, we could pull back on those ads and still rank really well. Or we can keep our budget where it is, spend more, and know that we are optimized for those terms. We've already weeded out all of the garbage things, like calling this a cup when it's clearly a giant bottle, right? We don't necessarily want to show up for that. If it's not driving us sales, we're going to pull that out and optimize the ad spend. And then we're also optimized on the organic side of things as that traffic starts to increase, which just means we can sit back, focus more on the customer service side of things, and not have to worry about where we fall and making sure that our title is dialed in, because we've done all of that before we got into the rush.
Yeah. No, I love it. There's some questions that came in. We'll go ahead and answer those. But I did want to, again, just remind you, if you are really considering using Etsy ads, Chris and I, that's why we're doing this workshop. And we're doing it a little bit differently, where we're not just teaching and sharing and showing and telling. We're actually going to give the assignment to start a 5-day Etsy ads challenge. So this way here, you can bring those results back, and then we can be a little bit more hands-on there. So it is a 2-session workshop, and it kicks off tomorrow, and the tickets are available right now. But we are closing the doors tonight at midnight Eastern time. And the reason why is because we are going to be switching our focus onto the class, because it starts tomorrow, and we want to get geared up for that. And I spent about 6 hours yesterday preparing for it, because I've got a lot of things to share. One thing that I'm going to be sharing, by the way, is I have one of our students we've had for a long time, even all the way back to the Amazon days, and she's been selling on Etsy for quite a while. I asked her if it'd be okay if I used her Etsy ads account to demonstrate how to do the pruning of some listings. And she said 100% yes. She's done over, I believe, up to this year so far, over $90,000 in Etsy sales. She spent about $9,000 in Etsy ads. And yeah, I'm going to be able to break down inside of her account. So I'm going to be doing a live, like over the shoulder, digging through an account, showing you what keywords are being pulled in, what one makes a good keyword, what one makes a bad keyword, getting rid of that, and all of those things. And we'll go through all of like what all of the terminology means, everything we're going to be covering. So if you are interested in attending that, again, little last call message here for you. Now, if you are watching this on the replay, you can go to brandcreators.com/ads. And if it's available to watch on demand, you can also get access there. But we are not sure that that's going to happen because, well, we are recording it, but we're just not sure if we're ever going to teach it live again. So if you're interested, definitely make sure that you jump in, go to brandcreators.com/ads. And Chris, if you can slap that up on the screen again there and leave it there for a minute, that would be awesome. So that way there are people that are watching can go ahead and do that. So, all right, Chris, let's answer a few questions. And let me just, before we do answer questions, I just want to say, like, I am so fired up heading into Q4 right now. I mean, the signs are pointing to it's going to be really, really good. Now, a little nervous because, my wife and I talked a little bit, and Chris, when you were here, there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of moving parts. But this is what we signed up for. And that is, really making Q4 probably about 70 to 80% of our sales. So we're geared up. And last month, our record month was in November, and it was $22,000. I'm almost certain we're going to crush that number for 1 month. So yeah, I'm excited. Can't wait.
Scott, it's funny, as you're going through that, we made a joke back at the beginning of August about the Q4 training camp being like our preseason camp, right? Like if you're thinking about NFL football, right? Like professional American football, that was our preseason camp. And that's why we decided to call it Q4 camp. And now, like, it is October, right? It's game time. Yes, it's baseball playoff time, but it's also Etsy holiday time, right? And like, this is the season to be geared up for. And if you're not excited right now and you are selling on Etsy, I have to wonder why. And I guess if you're watching this, drop us in the comment. Like, are you concerned about it? Are you not fired up? Like, what is the reason you would not be excited? And maybe we can help you out with that. But I think if you have a few basic things in place, even if you're not at the level where this store is, this shop is, if you didn't grow 208% year over year, like we happened to before Q4 even started, then you don't have to worry about it. You do have to have a few of those basic things in place. So if you are fired up, let me know in the comments. If you're not fired up or you're concerned, let me know in the comments if you're watching this live, why that is and what is the thing that's holding you back from being as excited as Scott and I are. And Scott, with that out of the way, I wanted to dive into a few questions.
Sure.
The first is going to be ads related. And it was, is it better to run ads on seasonally relevant products or evergreen products, which can still be given as gift? To me, the answer would be both, right? If you have stuff that sells all year round and you have ads that have consistently been profitable for you, or that product has been consistently profitable for you and the ads are break even or close to break even for you, then I would run those and then add in some of the more seasonal products as well. But I wanted to get your thoughts on that as well, Scott.
No, I'm going to agree with you 100%. I mean, yes, like right now, I think top priority needs to be what could be sold right now because of the holidays, right? Like what are people are going to probably buy an ugly Christmas sweater, right? Like, cause they're going to go to a Christmas party, right? Like that's what they're going to do. Right. But you also know that people are buying gifts. So you have to ask yourself, is this something that someone would buy, not necessarily for themselves, but for someone else? That's the gift side. The other one would be like, does someone want to wear this certain sweater or sweatshirt or put a flag in their yard because it's Christmas or because it's Halloween or because it's Thanksgiving, right? So we have to think along those lines. If it checks those boxes, then I'd say both. But I'd also be looking at like, what are the ones that are going to draw the most attention? What are the ones that are going to have the most demand? And those would be the ones that I would focus my Etsy ads dollars on.
And I think it also comes down to a factor of budget, right? If you have $100 a day to spend and you're not spending it, then by all means, leave the evergreen stuff in there. If you have $5 a day to spend, then maybe pull back on the evergreen stuff for now and focus on the stuff that you're launching for Q4 with that $5 a day. Why would I say that? Because if we pull the evergreen stuff out of there, we potentially lose a few sales every day, right? Well, the reason I would say that is right now, as we're getting into the beginning of Q4, this comes back to the data gathering phase that I was talking about a few minutes ago, right? Like if you have to choose between a sale or two now and 5 sales a day in 2 or 3 weeks, I'd say focus your time, energy, and effort on the one that's going to get us those 5 sales a day. Get as much data as you can about your holiday stuff right now, and then go from there. If you have the money to spend, leave the evergreen stuff in and add in the holiday stuff. If you don't have a big budget, I would focus a lot more on the holiday stuff, especially right now, because that will give you the data that you need to be optimized at the end of October, beginning of November, as that traffic really starts to ramp up. Scott, you guys never talk about alt text. Should it be done? Yes, we do talk about alt text in terms of images. And if you go watch any of the breakdowns we've done on SEO, we do talk about it there. It's also a legal requirement in a lot of countries. It's basically just another way of describing what's in the image. So I would just use it that way. You don't have to get super nerdy about it. Just describe what is in the image. What crafter in your pocket wanted to know, Scott, how do you know if your listing is optimized to run an ad?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, first off, I would want to be comparing to other successful listings that are similar to yours. And then I would want to say, okay, I'm going to look at that and I'm going to model that. So I always want to follow the success clues, right? So I would say, if you are also looking at your data, and this again is something we're going to go deep into on the Etsy Ads Accelerator workshop, is really like looking at click-through rate, right? And click-through rate is determined by how many clicks you get from the amount of views that have been displayed. So we're looking at views. That's how many times it's been displayed. How many times did people click on it? From then, how many times did people click to over to where how many people purchased? So these are metrics that we can look at and we can then start to adjust. If you're getting a low click-through rate, it could be an image issue. It could be a trust issue. So maybe you have to sprinkle in some reviews. There's some things that we can do, but I would say I would be looking at another listing, another product that's doing well, and then saying like, okay, how can mine be as good and how can mine be better? Right. So I'd go off of like success leaves clues kind of mindset.
I love it. Scott, we had somebody get back to us and say that they're worried about Q4. It was Jude Rose over on YouTube said, I'm worried about production issues from Printify, sweatshirt printing adhesion issues. I have another business and I'm worried about drowning in customer service, print on demand issues out of my control. And so here's something, and I know you did a video on this. I think it came out yesterday as of the time of recording this, either yesterday or the day before, talking about some of the big changes Etsy's making to their customer service and some of their seller policies as we get into Q4. So basically, the biggest takeaway from that, Scott, correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I'm trying to think of what the name of the actual program is, but basically their shipping coverage, right? Their order protection program, I think is what they call it.
Yeah, that's what it's called.
Expanded what they're covering both for buyers and sellers. So if it is an issue, Jude, that is truly out of your control, something doesn't arrive on time, it shows up and UPS lit it on fire, right? You shipped it, as long as it's not a you issue, then you are good to go. If something gets damaged in shipping, that is now covered. And I think it was, one time a year per like unique circumstance. So as long as you're not repeating the same issues over and over again, you're actually covered more by their protection than you were previously as a seller. If you are continuing to run into issues on the production side, my suggestion there would be just to switch providers. And I know that doesn't sound, it's not as easy as it sounds to say, especially if you have a lot of listings, but what we have found to be the best approach, especially with things like shirts and sweatshirts, is to find one provider that prints really well for us with sizes that we start to understand, and then we use them for all of the listings. And there's always going to be a few things that are out of our control, but then we at least know that the print production is usually pretty good. And if there's some sort of a shipping issue, that's now covered by the increased order protection from Etsy. And they're going to be a lot more promotional of that to buyers, and they're going to be a lot more open in terms of covering the sellers if something silly happens with UPS, like it doesn't show up the day that it's supposed to, somebody requests a refund, you're now covered on the seller side from that. The buyers are taken care of by Etsy, and then you're covered by the purchase protection program. So that to me would be where I would look. Let's see what we can do to get you into Q4 and start to reduce those things. There's always going to be a few things. And Scott, I know this is a concern we have coming into Q4 as well, which is, do we run into just getting too many messages in a day? And what are your thoughts on handling some of the customer service side of stuff that we can't really prevent up front,
Uh-huh.
like Printify crashing or something
Yeah.
like that? What are your thoughts on that? And is there a plan that we could help people like Jude and ourselves put in place to manage that as it comes up?
Yeah, I don't think there's like a one set way that you're going to be able to handle this. And we're worrying about something that isn't here yet, right? And I'm not saying we don't want to plan so we can, avoid that. But I am also not a believer of like, let's worry about something that's not here. Let's kind of work towards like that not happening, right? Like let's work on driving sales and all that stuff. And then if we start to see an issue, we can start to figure out how can we prevent that. But some things that we can do, and Chris, like you said, I think it's important that you get that relationship established with Printify and also with whoever you are choosing as your manufacturer, right, of that product. If you have not yet got a sample or have already shipped some stuff and you haven't got any feedback on the stuff, you might want to get that. So this way here, you can kind of work out the kinks before you get into the big rush. So those are just some things that you want to do to prevent even getting the message in the first place. But what I would say, and this is exactly what we're doing right now, we're going in at it like we're just going to take as many sales as we possibly can get. But if we see it starts getting a little out of hand, we might need to dial it back. And you can do that. That's the cool thing, right? We don't want to, but we can. I mean, even last year when we were in Q4 in November, my wife was like, man, I don't know if I can keep up. So we started raising our price actually to kind of slow things down a little bit. And it worked a little, but we still got a lot of sales because, it's kind of last minute and stuff. But then you also have people requesting to get things personalized or other customization pieces. And then that's where my wife was just like, we can't do that right now. It's too busy. So I just think you can't really plan, although you can get all of the other things as far as in place, as far as establishing that relationship, making sure the products you're selling have already been vetted and they've already been kind of tested. And then from there, see what happens. But there isn't really like, here's exactly how to do this so this doesn't happen to you.
Yeah, and I think there is something to be said to plan for the worst, hope for the best, but you'll never plan for anything. So I know one of the concerns, Scott, that you and I were talking about when I was there with Lisa was one of the things we ran into last year was the customization side of things, and we're playing with a few different things to try to speed that process up and reduce the amount of time and effort that goes into the customization process of things and changing how we're doing that, taking that out of Canva and doing that more directly in Printify, trying to streamline that workflow. And we said, this works in theory, but when we get into the Q4 stuff, what we might need to have is myself, Michelle, your dad, you, like everybody in Printify just doing orders, because that might happen. And it might only happen for a day, or it could happen for 3 months and we could raise our price by $10 and people could keep buying it. We don't know. And so having kind of a system like that in place helps us really streamline that process. And worst case, am I going to be up till midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, printing customized t-shirts? Potentially, right? But that's not very likely to happen. We know kind of where some of the hiccups are in the process, and we have a couple different levers that we can pull before we get to that worst case scenario of like all hands on deck, everybody with 3 laptops on VPNs trying to figure out a Printify server that isn't totally occupied with people, right? Logging in from the Netherlands to hope that Printify doesn't crash on us. That could happen. But the more likely thing to happen is we can bottleneck that somewhere else.
Yeah, Chris, I just wanted to interject here. My wife actually is in the other room, and she was she heard me talking about that, and she basically just told me that she heard through the grapevine that there's an actual thing now that might be rolling out within Printify that will be customer support for that customer. So there's something that they might be putting in place. Again, we're not 100% sure yet, but there's talk that they're going to have a support team that will be there just for your customers, right? And they will be interacting with that customer if they have an issue with that. I don't know how it's going to work, but she's telling me that there's possibly something like that that's going to be rolling out for the holiday season. I don't know how that's going to work because it's now not me talking, but they might be representing your customer as your company. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to look into it.
So if somebody, yeah, I get, I'm very confused as to how that would work, other than for like shipping
with
things.
your Etsy account, and then you would maybe assign an agent that's going to be for your shop.
I think that would make sense once the order makes its way to Printify, right? So basically what they would be saying is, if you get us the order, we will handle the customer service from there, which makes sense to me anyway, because if you have a problem with the order, then you as the seller right now are the person going into the system to ask them, and then they're asking the person anyway. So it seems like that would just shortcut the process if that's how that's working. So I like that a lot if that's something that's implemented. You still have to deal with the order side of things.
Yeah.
Right. But again, like we can think through what the worst case scenario would be and then go, that's very unlikely to happen. Right. What are some of the stopgaps that we can put in place? Well, we can raise price. We can simplify the customization process, which I know is something that your wife is working tremendously hard on. And then we can kind of go from there. And we have a couple different levers. Hey, maybe we delist a product if we just can't keep up with it, or we can't meet the quality expectations and we don't have time to go find another supplier right now. That's fine too. We can just delist that product and focus on the other things. So my suggestion would be that you sit down, you think about the worst case scenario for 5 minutes, think about a way to prevent it, and then have 2 or 3 systems in place. And that should get you over that hurdle. In the case of just worrying about print quality, order your samples now, make sure that they're coming in. And if they're not where you want them to be, then choose a different supplier while you still have time, so you're not dealing with that while you should be focused on just fulfilling as many orders as humanly possible. Somebody had asked over on YouTube, Scott, what are the maximum number of listings you can run if you are spending just that $5 a day?
You can run as many as you want. Yeah.
The answer is it depends, right? So if you're trying to get the maximum budget and the maximum use of that budget, it depends on the search volume for those listings. So you could have one listing that eats up $5 in budget, or you could have 100 listings that you need. It just depends on the volume that's associated with those. So I would put in the newest products that you've launched, see how much of that budget is taken up by those, and then start to scale from there. Word Photo Girl says, would you advise against running ads on super saturated and super competitive niches such as mugs and t-shirts? So first things first, mugs and t-shirts, not niches. Those are products, right? That is a big mistake we see a lot of people making. And so if you're just a generic t-shirt store, then you don't really have a choice but to run ads on t-shirts because that's all that you sell. If you are in a niche, if you're in the bass fishing niche and you sell bass fishing t-shirts, well, your competition is actually a lot more specific than you would think it is, because the chances of all of the people who are typing in the word t-shirt on Etsy really wanting a bass fishing t-shirt are very small. So you don't even need to think about all of the competition for t-shirt. You're really only thinking about the competition for bass fishing t-shirt. And my suggestion would be run the ads and let the data tell you what's profitable and what's not. I would run it on t-shirts. I would run it on everything just to see what's working and what isn't. But what are your thoughts on that, Scott?
Here's my only thought on this question. And the thing that I would say is, if you're selling random t-shirts in random niches, now that we know that niches are, things like bass fishing or weddings or, babies or whatever, right? Like any of that stuff. If you don't have other things to sell that particular person, it might be hard to make that profitable. So if you're just using ads to drive to a product and that's where you're going to make the money, it's going to be harder because yes, you're competing with all these other people. So you're probably going to spend more to get a click because everyone's bidding on that, right? That's how that works. So I'm not saying it can't work. I'm just saying I would not be as confident and willing to spend that money up front unless I was just doing it even temporarily to drive up sales. So this way here, I can rank higher than them, right? Maybe that's it. But if you're not having products that people can buy together to bring that cart value up, it's going to be harder to make that profitable on a one-off product. So that would be my only concern there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Ferris said, does editing my listing pictures or adding a video reset my Etsy algorithm? So first of all, it's not your algorithm, it's their algorithm, right? It's not specific to your listing. How they treat your listing within that bigger picture is a slightly different question. Typically, what they're really looking at are going to be your title, descriptions, and tags. So if you make changes there, that's when you would see the biggest direct shift in where you're ranking organically. Because pictures outside of something like alt text, which was something Anush had asked about, don't have keyword data associated with them. The only real place where they're going to make a difference is in the conversion rate. So where you change your title, tags, or description, you're going to see a fairly quick shift in where you're ranking for certain keywords. You won't necessarily see that changing something with the videos. Where you will see that is if your conversion rate increases, you'll likely rank higher for all of the keywords that you were already ranking for. If your conversion rate decreases, you'll likely rank lower. But that does take time because conversion rate is traffic divided by sales. So you making that change won't have a direct effect, but it will have a long-term indirect effect. Catherine said, I'm spending $150 a day max budget, but it's spending about 15 and I have over 300 listings. Should I be focusing just on holiday and not evergreen at this point? And I know we touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to get your thoughts. If we are trying to spend more than like $5, $10, $15 a day, where would your focus be right now, especially knowing that the traffic is going to be increasing essentially until the end of November?
I would probably run a test here. And that test would consist of maybe only advertising the products that are going to be most relevant right now for this time of year, and just test it. You can always turn them back on, right? And then run that for 5 to 7 days and see what happens. There could be a chance that, your budget is being spread out so much because it's small. And well, yours isn't that small. It's, I think, would you say, Chris, $100?
$150 and
$350. Yeah. So that probably isn't an issue. So thinking through this, and that's why I'm thinking out loud here, I would probably just try to take those, maybe 5, maybe 10 products and narrow it down, and then just try to run it that way and see if that changes anything, if that gives you more views, if it gives you more attention. So I would probably test that.
I would agree with that 100%. And I think, Scott, that was it for questions so far.
Cool.
Okay. There was one other one that snuck in here. You're saying only your top 5 items you did a discount of 25% on, and then you did $20 a day on ads or more. So what was that breakdown of that ads campaign, and what were we running on throughout the month of September to see that growth? So what kind of products and what was included in there?
Yeah. Okay. So we did several product launches, and I believe on the new product side, I would say we probably put up about 20. And I would say out of those, there's probably 10 that were like, these are going to have the most potential. But then we also layered in some of our evergreen products that we feel like, or that we felt like people would be buying at this time of year, right? It's like, so fall type products. But anything that was for the other time of the year, we really kind of honed in on just the stuff that was relevant right now. And it is a little bit different because I believe we spent more doing product launches, but I think it was necessary, right? We probably could have shaved that $1,500 down to $1,000. But to me, I really wanted to prime the Etsy pump and get ourselves sales. So this way here, we can start to rank when the traffic is going to hit. So hopefully that answered that question, but it's a little bit different because when you're doing product launches, your revenue number will be lower because we're giving a deeper discount as well. So we can spike those sales, and then we start to gradually increase that once the sales start coming in. And that's been working pretty well.
So basically, when you're launching a product, you're running as much ad budget to it as you can, and you're running a discount. You don't have to do that, but that's what we're doing because we're trying to really gather that data as quickly as possible, the traffic, what keyword they're coming from, and then what keyword results in the most sales. If we can make sure that our organic side is optimized for that, then we can go from there. And Scott, we did have a question. I don't know if we answered it already. And it was basically, how can you make sure that you're optimized for those things? And the answer is you can't be sure up front. You can get as close as you think, right? Based on the keyword volume and some of those kinds of things. But then as you start to get that ads data back, that's how you make sure you're really optimized, because you know what keywords lead to sales and you can make sure that you're optimized around those. So if this was a bottle, right, this could also be a thermos, although that is a trademark term, right? Whatever we want to call it, insulated water jug, and all three of those being equal, we might not know up front. Obviously, water bottle is probably going to have the highest search volume, but it's also probably going to have the most competition. If water jug is leading us to the most sales with a similar volume, then I'm going to rewrite the title to be more focused around water jug. So we're going to take our best guess and then use the data to reinforce that. When you ran your ads, did you have any difference in quantities of products? So did you notice that if you had a product that only had 25 in stock instead of 1,000, did you notice a difference? And the answer is probably not really. The place where you may start to see that is in very limited products, like one of a kind type of a things.
Yeah.
And I know we do have some people like Eco Couture in the chat who have more of like one of a kind type of a thing. The volume for those overall is going to be lower. And because your inventory is limited there, you're going to have fewer opportunities to show up actively. Now, this begs the question then, Scott, should you limit quantities of products if there's no real limit to the quantity of a product? So if it's not something you are hand making, it is a print-on-demand product. Is there ever a situation or a case where you would say, just put up 10 instead of the maximum of 999, I think?
No, we talked about this, and in theory, it sounds great because you're giving a limited amount, and then it says only 5 left or something, right? And we look at that as like it's a scarcity marketing move because we have less, so it makes you say, "Well, I better get this, or they're going to run out of stock." We've all done that. But if there's no true limit to how many, number one, it's somewhat not ethical, right? But number two is, and this makes sense. I've heard that if you limit the amount that you have, like say you have 25 versus having 500, Etsy could look at that in their algorithm and say, well, we don't want to push this too hard because they don't have enough quantity, right? To deliver, to satisfy the demand. So I personally have stopped doing that. We did it a little bit in the beginning, but then we just stopped. And actually our good friend Debbie, kind of told us that, she had heard through the grapevine that wasn't a good idea. So we just stopped. And we haven't done that. The better play there is to create a limited time offer, like a limited time sale or promotion. And that always works well. We've talked about that before, but yeah, so I would say, no, I would not limit it unless you actually only have 25 in stock.
Yeah, and like you said, Scott, there's other ways within the Etsy ecosystem that appear to be a lot more effective for driving that scarcity, like a 25% off promotion that ends tomorrow. They're going to show us those timers, and you get the same effect without having to worry about forgetting to renew the listing, which, especially as we get into Q4, like with all the stuff we were just talking about, fulfilling orders and dealing with the customer service issues and worrying about all those kinds of things, it's probably the last thing you want to worry about. One last question that popped in here, Scott. Is it better to categorize products by season? Like fall, Christmas, or keep products in larger categories, like by their product type, such as mugs, t-shirts, etc. What are your thoughts on how people should categorize stuff on the storefront?
Yeah, on the store side, it's always best if you can categorize, but it doesn't mean that that's going to make it where you're going to show up more, right? It's also a better buyer experience if things are organized better, right? But if you have things that you're just putting into a thing that aren't really Christmas related, like let's say that you're doing something and it's got Christmas stuff, yeah, you can create a category that says Christmas mugs, right? But you probably, you could have another category that was just whatever. Let's say it's bass fishing mugs, right? You could do that too. And then you could have one that's, for Christmas. But we were just talking about this morning, myself and my wife, about categorizing. And the biggest reason why you want to categorize is one, so it's shows up for people when they're there and they can navigate, but also for you when you're running a sale. if you don't have them categorized, it's a pain in the neck to start hand selecting what products you want, unless you just say, select category Christmas mugs to go on sale. Like that would be one of the things I would say.
Yeah, my gut tells me that it's probably categorize it by product type and then have a seasonal category, right? Just like Target or any other department store has. They have their clothing section, they have their home goods section, but then they have their like special Christmas section, right? They have their whatever, Festivus, Halloween, right? They have that section. And all they do is they bring some stuff that would be, you know, regularly in the t-shirt section. And if it's got a pumpkin on it, they're going to move it over to the special Halloween section for Halloween. And then they kind of just put it back. And I think that approach would work really well somewhere like Etsy. One, because it allows you to very quickly be able to select the products that you want to run a store promotion on. We can just say everything that's Christmas related goes into the Christmas section. And if we want to run a 25% discount, a 10% discount, whatever that is, then we're very easily able to select that in the back end. But also, if we think about who's coming to the storefront, it's usually repeat customers. So if they are coming to the storefront and saying, hey, I want to see what's new, you could have a new section, like new and noteworthy, right? Or you could just have the seasonal section so that they're seeing the next thing that they are likely to buy anyway, at least based off the customer behavior that we've seen. So if they bought a bunch of Halloween stuff, they come back in a couple of weeks, then they're going to start to see the Christmas stuff. Then they're going to start to see the New Year's stuff, the Valentine's Day stuff, the Cinco de Mayo, July 4th, fall, right? As we start to work our way through the year. So I kind of like the idea of having that seasonal category and then just going in at the beginning of whatever season it is Valentine's Day a season, like whatever the upcoming holiday is, and kind of rotating out some of those products. And then outside of that, just saying, hey, if you want a bass fishing t-shirt, you go to the t-shirt section. If you want a bass fishing pillow, you go to the pillow section. If you want to see a bass fish wearing a Santa hat, that's all going to be in the Christmas section. And that's pretty straightforward for both people, or for all types of people coming to the store.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I love it.
Awesome.
All right, guys, we got to run. We got a workshop to prepare for, and I'm not quite done with all of the material that I'm going to be covering, but we are going to be, we're going to be closing the doors to that as far as enrollment, and that will be tonight at midnight Eastern time. So if you are interested, make sure that you go to brandcreators.com/ads. Again, this might be the only time that we teach this live. So if you want to be part of the live class, it will be 2 sessions, by the way. It'll be one this week and then one next week. And we are going to be doing a 5-day Etsy ads challenge for the class as well. So this way here, we can really dig in and help them implement, but then also help them look at their data and make some adjustments and some tweaks and understand how to really analyze that to make better decisions. So that's happening tomorrow. And if you already got your ticket to the workshop, we sent out an email this morning. We're going to send another one out this evening, and then we'll send another one out tomorrow morning. So this way here, we make sure that you get the link to access the live room. And if you can't attend live, we are going to be recording it, and we will be making it available to all attendees. And the other question that I did get, Chris, on the workshop was, if I can't attend it live and I want to ask questions, how do I do that? Well, we're going to be sending out an email to everyone and asking, if you have any questions and you can't make it, let us know and we'll answer it on one of the sessions. And then that way there, you can listen back and you can have your question answered, even if you can't make it live. All right. So go to brandcreators.com/ads if you are interested in driving more traffic and more sales this Q4. That's what we're going to be focusing on for, 2 days. All right. So that's going to wrap it up, Chris. As always, guys, take care, take action, have an awesome, amazing day. And who knows, maybe we'll see you tomorrow on the workshop. Take care, guys.